MSD of Wayne Township Board of Education working session is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do the roll call this evening. Susan Graves,
Present.
Sherry O'Day Marcotte,
Present.
Ben Wakefield,
Present.
Ramika Graham.
Present.
I'm Brandon Bowman. Please note absent this evening
Right here, which next is the one?
is Karen Burke, and Mr. Nance is with us. Thank you. Dr. Butts, we have a recognition.
We do. Honor, if you please, Dr. Taylor, please join me. It has become our tradition, when one of our employees earns the highest degree possible in our field, to celebrate that, to make note of all of that hard work and accomplishments, with a, hopefully, maybe not the first, but definitely one that matches all the rest of ours, a nameplate that appropriately identifies Dr. Audrey Taylor as having her. So Audrey joined the Ed Center staff now, how many, four years ago, and serves on our e-learning team. So do you want to tell the board just a little bit about your study and?
Sure. So, my role here is a digital integration specialist, and we rolled out a new initiative to redesign the credit program. And so, that's it. So, my minor is in technology in urban classrooms, UPS program, IUI. And so I follow the initiative, and I spoke with teachers, and spoke with course designers, and got their perspectives on how it went and how they felt about it. And
You got your degree at,
Indiana University, Indiana.
so a lot of hard work, late nights. You brought some folks here with you.
Yes, so my fiance Joe, and then my colleague in coaching.
Support Dr. Taylor. It's good you say yes.
Yeah.
You will. It takes a minute. You will. So, well, we're so proud of your accomplishment and know how hard it is to get to that point. So congratulations. You're welcome.
Dr. Butts, do we have anyone sign up for public comment?
No, sir, we did not.
Thank you. Moving on to human resources, Dr. Suggs.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Personnel report A3 was provided in Board Docs for your review. I'd be happy to answer any question you may have and ask for approval of personnel report A3.
I move for approval of personnel report A3.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comment or discussion regarding human resources report A3? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Suggs.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Now that you have approved the A3, I'd ask Danielle Olet to join Dr. Butts in front of the room. Ms. Olet began her career in Wayne Township as a sixth grade teacher at Chapelwood Elementary in 2008. Since 2021, she served as an instructional coach, providing curricular and instructional support in kindergarten to sixth grade classrooms. Ms. Olet has provided leadership as a member to mentor new teachers, facilitated weekly professional learning community meetings for grade 6 through K through 6 teams, and designed and led professional development across elementary grade levels. She was recognized as the Teacher of the Year in 2017. Ms. Olet earned a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education from Purdue University. She completed her master's degree in education with a technology focus at IUPUI, and her MBA and administrative license as a Woodrow Wilson Fellow from the University of Indianapolis. I present to you tonight our new assistant principal at Wayne Township Preschool, Danielle Olet.
Now, on behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to present you with your first Township briefcase. Thank you. So, you can carry it back and forth. So, you have lots of supportive colleagues here in the second row, and like you have family in the first row. Would you like to introduce the family?
My husband and my kids are here, Joey, Ella, and Donovan. My parents are here. And then.
76 graduate. Well, it's changed a little bit since you graduated. Yeah,
You,
you're waiting.
Township, family, and, some.
Appreciate you wearing purple today.
I graduated from Brownsburg. So.
I know
the same colors.
I know it's a little different shade.
Yeah.
No, you have some words you'd like to do.
I just want to thank you for this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to continuing leadership with the Township.
Congratulations.
Dr. Samuel is about to do a riveting presentation on our finances, and Mrs. Templeman is going to share some information about the superintendent search and the survey. So you are welcome to stay for this open meeting and for those agenda items, but if you have other plans tonight or would like to go celebrate, now's a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I apologize. The Fairbanks grant report has been delayed. It will be on a future agenda.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the financial update for July 2023, Dr. Samuel. Sorry. That is July 2025.
I was looking.
Next time.
I was looking for the typo. That's a big mistake for the numbers guy.
My mistake.
But no, it's a good segue because we are going to take a little trip back in time here in just a moment too. So. So what we want to do today is piggyback a little bit on the budget presentation, drill down to a little bit more granular level. It's only 7 slides, as I told my colleagues in cabinet today, but packed with a lot of information, I think provides context for the next couple months and where we're at and what actions we need to take. So as always, as we work through this, if you have questions, that's the great thing about the working session. Just, jump in and we can start talking about the plan B. So these are goals that you have largely seen before. A few things changed that crossed out or struck through the 40 million. I'll talk about that in just a moment, change that to 30. And then the line above that, identify cost reductions for a balanced 2027 budget. That used to say 2026. So we'll talk about where we're at with the budget process, and obviously with the 25-26 school year beginning, we're locked into personnel costs and things like that for the most part through almost the end of 26. As you might know, our last our first payroll in August was the first one for our new school year. So you can kind of, we're going to be paying the salaries at the rate that they're in there until we get to, basically mid-August. So there's a little bit of savings for 26 that is possible, but by and large, a lot of what we're modeling for 26 is really kind of a reality at this point as we work through our school year. Of course, we want to continue to provide the best services and resources possible for our students. That cash balance, as we look at where we sit today and we look at what we know the rest of 25 brings and what 26 brings, we amend that to 30 million as kind of the goal where we want to stay at or above so that we can have some flexibility moving forward. That is really, that number drives that next bullet point. Having the cash balance just gives us some ability to absorb things. It allows us to be able to respond in a measured manner over the course of time rather than in a very acute and hypersensitive manner. If and when new things come our way, from a financial perspective. We know that the referendum renewal is out there. We know there's some unknown legislative impacts depending on maybe what comes at us in the next session or the session after that. We know that while we weathered the most recent storm with title grants, we don't know what the future holds there. And so there's a lot of variables that we want to stay ready for. Of course, that financial stability to work on consistently improving staff pay, and then just our overall profile as we do tend to, I'm talking, shoot debt over the next few years. We want to keep that rating high as best possible. Interest rates we keep.
The 30 million is about 15%. We had a really good conversation last week, policy analytics on what should that number be. There are districts that have as high right now as 50%, which is excessive. There's been years where we've been down less than 5%. So that 15% gives us that flexibility while not holding too much cash balance, and allowing us to do those things. But, you know, we've been sitting at about 20% a couple of years. We're comfortable, policy analytics is comfortable with us with that 15%. Okay.
So how did we get here? You know, I think is a valid question from everybody. You know, last year, finishing the year at, you know, a little bit of a surplus, 24. How do we all of a sudden in 25 are trending for a deficit of 12 to 13 million dollars? So wanted to just take a quick trip back in time. 2019, we have the second referendum that is passed by the community. And our enrollment reaching a peak of about 16,891. So if you look a little further down, last year, our spring ADM was 15,810. So basically 1,000 students less. It's not perfect math to say 10,000 a student, but it's pretty close. And so you kind of get the feel about $10 million in just enrollment over that 5-year span, which is obviously a significant number. Then we have COVID. We have ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, and I would point you to the expiration date on the ESSER $3 as last December. We spent ours down by the end of October, so there was just a month or 2 months, I should say, in 24 where we saw those costs come back to us. But now we have a full year of those costs coming back to us from ESSER $3. In 2023, we also had the expiration of the 2015 referendum. It was that 35-cent rate that we know we have for the 2019 referendum also. We collected about $16.1 billion from that referendum this year. So again, start to stack up some things. Of course, the expiration of the referendum is a part of, you know, the equation with regard to our community. Those are real dollars that every community member, every property owner in Wayne Township feels the relief from when a referendum expires. That's going to occur outside the caps. So those are real savings for all property owners within our boundaries. So in 24, we had about $8 million in ESSER that is coming back to the ed fund here in 25. We also did some adjustment with our debt rate, which we are a very rate sensitive district, meaning when our debt rate is higher, our debt levy is higher, our operations fund, our operations levy reduces, and vice versa. Our debt level and levy goes down, our operations fund is going to go up a little bit because of that reduced circuit rate. So that played a role as we set and maintain our debt rate for 2025 at the $1 level. So those are some things that we have talked about, but the difference in our operations fund is there at the end of that, but you know, call it $5 million. So you add about $8 million from ESSER, $5 million or so from our debt rate, what we were anticipating, and you get to that number pretty easily. Now we know, after the last legislative session, that Senate Enrolled Act 1 is gonna continue to have impact at a higher and higher level over the next 5 years as it rolls off tax rolls and reduces property values because of the credits that it provides to homeowners. So that's kind of the walk down memory lane. Questions?
I just have a quick question about enrollment, either someone can answer about 1,000, is it spread out, or is it younger grades, which I know it's not clean, but yeah.
You really can see it,
It would
kind
do.
of slowly matriculating up. We had, I'm sure you'll remember, we had that bubble where we had some 1,350 cohorts that were stacked on top of each other. The last of those cohorts was the class of 2025. So, when we're pushing out 1,300 or so, and we're not sure where those kindergarten numbers are gonna settle this year, but here's probably, either at 1,100 or below 1,100, that would be starting to feel that.
Our last demographic study, which was unfortunately, we had to rely on data other than census data because the last census was just so horrible. Indicates, obviously, based on birth rate, that we're going to continue to see declines in Marion County, pretty much across the county, with one exception at this point, and that was, even as superintendent acknowledges, it's just because the data isn't clean yet, that everybody's looking at a couple hundred student reduction in enrollment this year, and we're right on track for that to happen as well, at least a couple hundred. So, and then if you look at that data set through the cohorts that matriculate through our grade levels, we could easily be down another 1,000, 2,000 students in the next 10 to 12 years if something doesn't turn around. When you look at the students coming from out of district and our students who are choosing to go to another option, we balance out. So at least we have that. We get about the same number of students coming in as we have going out. So that trend has been pretty consistent over, since the pandemic. But I don't see, at least the current data set with the current information we have, I do not see our enrollment rebounding to that 16.8. And in fact, I think we're going to continue to plan and prepare for a loss of 150 or so students, 100 to 150 a year, as the larger grades graduate and the smaller grades are coming in behind.
When's AD this year?
October 1st, they got moved.
What are we looking like so far?
We're right now, well, so thanks to Dr. Harvey and his team, we think we have the cleanest data we've had at this point in quite some time. We've cleaned those students who have not been in, which sometimes we hold on to them a little bit longer.
Yeah.
We're down a couple hundred right now. So I think that's what we were, our last numbers.
Yeah, I think that's safe.
But so we'll see. We're still getting enrollments. We're still having students who, so in a highly mobile district, Sherry can attest to this. We went through a really extensive process to balance all of our elementary school enrollments out. It lasted about 3 years. And then the imbalance, because you just have so many, you can't predict when you have 50% of your properties being rentals, where children are going to reside. Because that stability just doesn't exist in the rental units. So that's, something also that we need to be cognizant of. We'd love to have another demographic study and probably should prior to the next referendum consideration. But we don't have any better data today than we did because we haven't had a census since the last one. But we're definitely going to inquire to see if there might be a better opportunity now that we're out of the pandemic and things are settling down just a little bit. And we might get a better sense of where we are at least in Wayne.
This may not be the right time to ask this question, but did you have to balance any teachers?
We had that conversation today, actually, in every building. Yeah, we have, and actually it has resulted in 11 fewer. We were able to reduce 11 teaching positions because of our just demographic shifts. We'll have 3 buildings where we need to move staff, I think, but 3 out of 11 isn't too bad. We're moving staff within the other 8 buildings, and And then we have 3 buildings where we're gonna have to move some staff, but other than that, it's, Dr. Pierce and the elementary principals have really worked that data set out and, up till midday today, trying to figure out where all those pieces fit, so.
It's always that hard conversation of, the good news is you have a job. The bad news is you may need another job here.
Well, the other interesting aspect that is fairly new for us is we have transitioned to teaching personnel who are actually in the classrooms teaching the courses, because, as that shifted over, we used to ask them to student teach without pay. And so they had to give up 12 weeks of pay to student teach, become a teacher. Now we've worked out with universities that they're okay with us hiring them to be in the classroom, to be the teacher of service. We may have another teacher of record, but they're able to get in the classroom to do. So we do have several of our classrooms where we have a transition to teaching individual who will, is working towards their license.
No, those are very relevant questions.
Interestingly enough, and very, very good for Brooklyn. She is going through Marion. We can't find PE teachers. Yes,
Yes.
3. We had, are we down 2 openings now?
2.
Yeah, we had 3 openings for the longest time. Could not find PE teachers. Yes,
Can you hold one?
right?
Oh, that's their fault, yeah.
Speaking of teaching.
Yeah.
Alright. So this is just some of the positions. You've seen this data before. It's not new. We had moved the computer science teachers to the ESSER grant. Our ABE programs, B&L teachers, reading specialists, parent liaisons, and then brought on the literacy grant as well. The 1/3, 2/3 there is just referencing what Wayne is paying for those positions versus what the grant, the literacy grant funded by Lilly through the DOE is covering for the position.
The positions that are listed here, I can't remember, were these new positions that we added?
Reading
when we got
specialists were.
Okay,
The other positions were not. They were existing positions that we were able to move over,
to the ESSER funding.
which allowed us to build up cash balance. So that 20% was because we were able to move some of those. We did intend for some of those positions to not continue. However, with the literacy grant and a few other things, we kept them, which means now it's, back to the education fund, since they're not grant funded, but yeah, the reading specialist, all the other positions already existed. Did we have a parent meeting? Might have had,
But those have kind of moved around over
Yeah.
the years. I don't, that funds to that certain.
yeah,
So setting the stage, as we mentioned, Senate Enrollment Act 1, then that impact starts to settle on top of these other financial factors that we're working through. As we've discussed, further makes adds challenges to our finance. We're going to receive less funding as a result, and obviously that creates some additional complexities and things that we have to address. So, of course, there's a connection to negotiations, and in this, one of the things that's interesting with Senate Enrolled Act 1 is we know that as we get out past 27 to 28, 29, 30, the impact of Senate Enrolled Act 1 continues to grow. And so the balance of how we assess what dollars we may or may not have available for negotiations for the next 2 years is a little bit tempered, because if we commit to those dollars today for the next 2 years, they're still going to be there in 6 years. So it's a little bit of this really projecting out, what does that look like in conjunction with additional reductions in assessed valuation, and as a result, our operations fund down the road, so all the way to 2031. We know that our deficits beyond 2027 and beyond are certainly increased as a result of Senate Enrolled Act 1, and that we're looking at where can we find some reductions, cost savings for the 26 to 27 years, kind of where this all settles out. And then, of course, Dr. Butts has mentioned, but it's also part of the financial strategy for the district is, as we assess, we cannot renew our referendum in the spring of 27 anymore. Our choices are to either let that expire, potentially go in 26, or potentially go in 28. But of course, financial ramifications either way, with regard to that. If it expires, we go a year, or more likely a year and a half without those funds. If you go early, then, there's some different mechanisms that we would pull as far as what we would levy for the current referendum, or however that scenario would play out. Those are a lot of detailed conversations that certainly we can work through the next year. Beyond that,
Any limitation to, the language of a referendum when voting on and when it starts? Can that date change?
so the mechanism there, if it passes, that starts the clock on that referendum. Where we have flexibility is in the budget process. And so, we can choose to levy all of that, all the way to that maximum levy, that 35 cents for our current one, or we can reduce that in a given year. Or, potentially just not levy at all and set that one to 0. We report that to DLGF in the budget process, so they will reduce that. That impact is then followed through to property tax. Property tax rolls into home or business. That's just what.
So to take that next step further. If you went after a new referendum in 2026, not renew the existing referendum, because it's a whole different set of questions, right? Or a whole different set of data in that question that you're gonna be asked. If you go in November of 2026 and that referendum passes, you do not have to levy the collections on the final year of the 2019 referendum.
Okay.
So that one goes to 0, you start collecting on the new one, which now is a set dollar amount, it's not a cents per $100. So it's a dollar amount that you will establish that will be collected each year for the next 8 years. That one will not escalate as AB escalates, it'll be a set dollar amount. So they've made you declare how much you need. If it fails, then you still have a year to make decisions on what those reductions are gonna be, because you're still gonna be able to collect 2027 on that 2019 record.
So it could be a good communication point to say, this is the money you can claim on taxpayer. Because it wouldn't change based on TV, that you're saying, like, they would know. whatever.
Well, they won't, because it'll be dependent, it will be dependent on AB under the cap, or what, actually, it will be dependent on AB, but it won't be set at 35 cents. So depending on how AB shifts commercially, rental, and individual property owners, that could shift the balance on what's collected to get to that dollar amount. That makes sense? So if you have a large, well, you're gonna have a very large tip company. The airport's gonna tip additional property, that could impact property that falls underneath this referendum. If hypothetically one of your larger taxpayers, which tend to be our manufacturing plants here, one of those were to go out of business or to move, then that shifts for, you also have real property tax, that is going away. It now will be shifted down to 0, where it used to have a floor on the depreciation of all the equipment in the facilities. Now they can depreciate to 0. So you're gonna have some of that balancing going on. So you will see, I think, some additional burden. See, correct me if I'm wrong. You will see some additional burden on the local home that doesn't currently exist, but it's not capped at 35 cents per $100. It's gonna be capped at that dollar amount.
Oh, okay, I tied into that dollar amount.
So would it be a collected dollar amount over the 6 years, 7 years? Would we have to say how much we want over that 7 years, or is it each year?
Each year.
Okay.
So, hypothetically, I think right now we're about 16 million.
That's right.
So, and that started at 10. So you can see that that's grown as AB has continued to grow. You would set a cap, hypothetically 20 million, try to project 8 years out, how much you're gonna need. We don't know what inflation is gonna do, we don't know what the economy is gonna do. But you're trying to project out in 8 years, what do I think I'm gonna need to do the same things I'm doing today? And then that's what you would levy on for the road. So what is that sweet spot, right? Then not knowing anything that's gonna come out of the General Assembly, not knowing anything that's gonna happen with tariffs or the economy or anything else, so.
The other way to that is you have to articulate the max tax rate and the dollar amount. It's the lesser of the two. So if you misjudge on your tax rate and you can't levy all, call it 20 million, just lose. You can't collect all of that. It's the lower of the two and give here, which is another, again, to Dr. Buzz's point, projected 7 years out. It's kind of a difficult game to predict.
The kids, this algebra comes in.
The last part there is, the cash balance and then additional appropriation. So, as you know from our conversations, we are deficit financing right now. So we're spending down that cash balance. And we talked earlier about how we let that 2015 referendum expire, so we don't have those funds. So, at the next board meeting, well, actually, at October board meeting, because we have to post this, I will bring an additional appropriation resolution for our referendum fund. And we talked about that 2015 referendum expiring. So the cash balance, because of ESSER, has allowed us to build up in that 2019 referendum fund. So what we're doing is spending that down now that we don't have both referendums to help fund those things. So as that is depleted, then, you know, we obviously continue to shift to other funds that have cash balance, but wanted to make sure you had some context of that. Of course, that makes sense as we think about where, you know, where things are headed, that cash balance of referendum fund would be depleted if we're obviously going back to asset community. That's kind of the general strategy there, economic strategy is those are the finances associated with letting a referendum expire and kind of where that puts us. This slide is unchanged from the budget slide. We have, of course, we have our July actuals now. So these numbers, they'll shift a little bit from you know, month to month based on our actuals that come in. But of course, present a pretty challenging financial picture. It's important to remember what this includes. So this includes a 1.5% increases in salaries and only a 1% increase in our state aid. So we baked in some additional negative numbers. We were just talking about our enrollment, and this also bakes in some of those decreases. So for 2025, we're planning on 15,750. So anything above 15,750 kids would obviously increase our revenue. Anything below that, it's going to decrease it, and it's going to, you know, mess with that number there for 25. For 26, we've modeled that down to 15,500. For 2027, we've modeled that down to 15,250. And that's where we've left it until we can continue to assess what's happening. And that was part of the conversation with Cabinet today. As we think about the work that has to happen over the next few months, we're doing that, we're not doing that in a vacuum. Enrollment is going to continue to ebb and flow. And to, you know, to the conversation we had earlier, we have to make some real-time decisions on what that looks like from a staffing perspective. And so while we know those are important, you know, we've got to keep an eye on where that gets, and we've got to know that where we've kind of put the marker in the ground here is at 15,250. If we're above that, we know in 27 we're going to be right where we thought we would be. If we're below that, then we've got to probably amend that number and really start to think about things differently as far as how much we might need to save. Trying to think what else here beyond that. I think those are the main components here. You'll see that we've talked about $15 million, but in 27, the negative number is bigger than that. And I think, you know, we want to obviously be as conservative as possible. There's lots of things that go into this. So we've talked about that $15 million number. And then we've also talked about potentially if we either aren't able to or don't pursue another referendum, that we need to find another $20 million worth of savings. So some of that is knowing there's a lot of unknown down the road with the referendum on the revenue side, enrollment on the revenue side, and obviously with legislation on Senate Enrolled Act one side and potential future legislation, title grants, etc. So we're trying to balance those things and make sure we get to the right spot, but that we're not overcorrecting also, so that we're in a position to continue to serve our kids at the highest level possible. Other things that go into that, certainly a potential revenue increase. Dr. Butts mentioned 20 million. There's a lot of conversations between now and then. We know that our debt levy will impact this, so we'll continue to see what we can do. If we can reduce that debt levy, we know that's going to help our operations fund, but we're still waiting on that modeling for assessed valuation to come back and know what those numbers are. Salary strategy, as we talked, raises in a given year, those carry forward every year. So as you manipulate and adapt those numbers up or down, that impact grows exponentially each and every year as you go further and further out. So a few years with really large raises impacts down the road a lot. A few years with really low raises or no raises impacts things down the road quite a bit. So lots of things to consider there. We are cautiously optimistic that the Lilly grant is also going to be a way that we can hopefully supplement on the revenue side. Dr. Butts submitted that for us on Friday afternoon, and
49 million.
now we wait. Now we wait. So we'll see how that goes, but we know that can help us out. And of course, other things like reduced spending on critical materials. There's lots of things to think about on the expenditure side for the future, but lots of unknowns. Inflation, future legislation, all of those pieces will certainly factor into that strategy. So where do we go from here? We did get assessed valuation numbers back from the gateway system. We are up about 10%. So, that's a good thing on one hand, but also when you know that our state and our governor were trying really hard to decrease property tax bills for our residents, that is not helping that part of the equation. So, we'll see what that brings in the long term. In the short term, it definitely gives us a little bit more capacity in our operations fund and perhaps a little flexibility with our debt levy also. So we'll explore those. Dr. Butts is talking about the SEA1 Efficiency Commission or committees, lots of different terms we could use there. But as we have some of these conversations with the community, with CTA, and then start to identify where do we go from here? What does that look like? How do we get to that number? We know that fall ADM we've talked about. We know that negotiations are coming up. Our 2-year agreement is up, and so we will negotiate here this spring. That's a big part of how we craft our financial stewardship for the next few years. Of course, then in December, hopefully kind of finalize that cost savings plan, knowing that there's, once you have the plan, there are, as we've also referenced this evening, probably some difficult conversations about how that settles out and how we implement that plan spring of 2026 here. So wanted to make sure that we had this information kind of in front of you. Wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to answer questions that you might have. This is going to be an ongoing assessment and certainly commit to keeping everything that we have and all the updates we get at your fingertips as they arrive.
Dr. Samuel, as we consider what's on the horizon, in your opinion, when would we as a board need to determine if we're going to pursue a referendum? And then kind of to piggyback on that, would we also look to engage a consultant such as Winston Terrell like we did before, or have we learned enough along the way to handle this on our own?
Yeah, so I think really important questions. Number one, from a statutory perspective, it's by June of 26
Okay.
to be on the ballot for fall, for November of that same year. So So a little bit of time, but the months keep ticking away faster and faster, and but a very important question for that. From the other side of that, I was fortunate to sit in on a session at IASBO, kind of districts who have recently been through that process. Without speaking out of turn and knowing that, we've got a superintendent transition in between there. I think there are a lot of new strategies, I think, that consultant can assist with. And, we think about some of the digital marketing, opportunities that sit out there at this point. We also have had recent conversations with policy analytics that it does appear there's gonna be a really high number of districts pursuing referendum in 26. A typical year, 6, 7, 8 referendum are being pursued. It's possible that it's gonna be in the 30s. And so the competition for the resources of the experts in those areas, from policy analytics to referendum consultants, is gonna go from here to here. And so there's, I think, a strategy question involved and embedded within that as well, over what that looks like. And of course, lots of legislation that dictates what we can do here before, if there were to be a resolution to pursue a referendum, and what can happen after that. Lots of pieces that go with that.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to the superintendent search community survey feedback. Ms. Temple.
Well, as all of you know, our district is embarking on an effort to hire our sixth superintendent. Our school board is doing that. And as I know that you take that responsibility extremely seriously, the decision was made that we needed to make sure we got to the community and see what it is that is important to them, as you consider what the ideal profile of candidate would look like. We made the decision to do a community-wide survey. And that was launched July 20th. It ran through August 4th, and it was shared extensively through Parent Square, through internal communications, on social media, on a podcast, prominently on our website. And we were fortunate, as we are so often, to have a great amount of community response and engagement. We generated through that survey 1,331 quantitative responses, as well as 370 written responses. And the data revealed in that just a clear consensus on the qualities and priorities that our community expects in our next superintendent, and hope that the board will consider as you make that selection. My intent today is to give a high-level overview of what we learned from that. The school board, of course, has had an in-depth report given and is looking at that extensively. So the goal today for me is just to give a high-level overview of what we heard so that we can share that with the community. The voices that we heard from, we were excited to have just a wide range of community voices with, as you can see, particularly strong input from parents and as well as district staff. When we asked them to rank the most critical leadership qualities, the top 3 of those responses were strong communication and listening skills, ethical leadership and integrity, and community engagement and relationship building. And what we learned, key insight in terms of leadership qualities, is that communication skills emerged as the overwhelming priority. It was chosen by 4 out of 5 nearly respondents, followed closely by ethical leadership in second, looking for someone who leads with honesty and transparency. And then in third place was community engagement, looking for someone who is approachable and visible in our schools and our community. The key insight that we learned in terms of the professional background that our community would like to see is that our community strongly values educational authenticity and experience. So they're looking for an educational leader who has experience supporting a wide range of needs and backgrounds in our students, and someone who understands classroom realities. And finally, our community, when we asked what their first year priorities that should be considered, academic achievement was a clear top priority for them. So just wanted to give that as an outline. Again, the board has seen the report and it's considered it much more in-depth responses, but we would certainly appreciate all of the staff, parents, and students who took the time to complete the survey. It certainly provided the school board with an in-depth look at the competencies that our community would like to see in our next superintendent. And it also helps to inform the school board as they create their ideal profile of our next superintendent. So thank you to the community. I also just want to note that Dr. Butts, over and over again in the report, it was noted that he's set a very high bar for our. And then finally, just thank the school board for your careful consideration. A huge decision, and we really appreciate your leadership.
Thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay. Board, do we have any comment or discussion this evening? Dr. Butts, do we have any news?
Slight item, it's our fall conference for ISBA, IEPSS is just around the corner, and an interesting nuance, and Mr. Nance, I'd love to discuss this with you after the meeting, but instead of the delegate assembly being first thing in the morning, it's actually at noon on that first day. So a little bit different nuance there. So we're gonna have some different, we also have groups going to 3 different things afterwards. We did that survey earlier, and we have some that will stay downtown with our vendor Meyer Najum. Some who are going to go to IMS with our vendor Schmidt Associates, and some who are just going home. And so travel arrangements will be a little different this year. So I'd like to coordinate some of that at our next meeting so that we can get that figured out.
What's the date?
That is Monday, September the 15th. That's the first day. So it'll be during that lunch hour. Yeah.
Running into a problem again on dates.
Okay. Well, there will be lots of people there representing.
Can do that.
Yeah, yeah. So we can talk about that, but so, you know, in the past, we've had that delegate assembly first thing in the morning. And, so we've had a early departure at 7 o'clock. We won't necessarily need that, although conference registrations opens early. We still could do a 7 o'clock departure if there was anybody who wanted to go early. Otherwise, we typically left at 8 o'clock. The first general session though starts at 8:45. I think that's a little bit earlier than it has been as well. So we may be looking at doing something just a little bit different, but the travel home will be kind of that other important piece. So I may send out just a quick little survey to see how many people want to ride carpool and how many people just plan on driving themselves. That will also inform our decisions on how many vehicles we need to take and those kinds of things. So would like to coordinate that between now and September the 6th. Is that our next meeting? September the 8th, which is our next regular board meeting. And have that finalized so that we can get that out for the travel of the 15th.
I mean, our delegate won't get to go to Roots.
We may have to get a to-go box. That's right. Yes, that discussion was had today as well.
Automatic.
Important thing.
If Mr. Nance needs to miss, or Mr. Nance is there and wants to go to Ruth's Chris, and everybody wants to go to Ruth's Chris, I will have to miss because I'm actually presenting some information to the delegates, so I would be there on behalf of Wayne Township. If everybody wanted to go have lunch.
About 99% sure I'm not gonna make it.
So, we do, actually. The ramp closed.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something else now, but because we still have a connection at Ruth Chris, we were able to order in advance. And it is waiting on us when we get there. So it does expedite our process through. And allows us to get back in time to make sessions in the afternoon. So it's been, we've utilized the relationship we have with, one of their employees. So it's been, so actually on the 8th also, we will have a menu that you can order in advance so that, your meal will be waiting on you.
I was gonna volunteer, but if you're gonna be there already,
I'll be there. I'll bring a cooler if you want to, have a to-go box.
I appreciate it.
Order accordingly.
And I've just sent around a shameless plug for the Ben Davis Lions Pancake Breakfast, so September 6th.
Remember this,
I see we have an expanded menu.
We do have an expanded menu, and if anybody knows a good recipe for gluten-free biscuits, I need to know. So there you go.
Gluten-free biscuit.
Right.
Yeah, you didn't like them?
Too grainy. But that's a good, I appreciate
add
that.
one more gravy on it, we'll do.
No, think about that, Ben. Maybe it'd be biscuits and extra.
thank you, Mr. Obvious.
If there's nothing else, we're adjourned at 7:22.
Thank you.
Susan, did you print these up?
Yeah, Brendan, no, I think Andrea, Beatty